Hey everyone, it's Will Curran from Endless Entertainment, and we're back again, episode 38, 37. Oh my gosh, of hashtag event icons. So excited to be here. We got Laura in the background answering your guys' questions. Unfortunately, Sean can't make it today, so we are missing Sean. But you guys, you have to be excited because we have an amazing panel, an amazing topic to discuss, but we're going to just hold off and pump the brakes just for a second. And if you've watched this show before, you know that this is not a typical podcast. This is all about you, the audience who are watching this right now, getting to ask all the amazing questions of these amazing event professionals. So, throughout the entire show, hop on Twitter with hashtag event icons, or in the question pane of GoToWebinar, you can submit your questions all throughout the show and ask anything you want. I mean, literally, this is an Ask Me Anything. Your chance. Do it. Don't miss out. Ask the questions that you want to know. But also while you're doing that, be sure to tweet, share your favorite nuggets of information that you learn, share anything you really, really want on Twitter as well. And we're going to be live tweeting with you the entire show. So just hop on, share this on social media, hashtag event icons, pretty simple. So, before we get into everything, I have to really, really thank our guests and be so excited because we have an amazing panel. Today we're talking about how we educate the future generations of event planners and how do event planners stay up on all the changes going on in our industry. As we know, it is rapidly changing as well. So, I want to not delay anymore, and we really, really got to get rocking and rolling. I got to introduce our amazing guests. We're going to start off with Wendy Hultsman. Wendy is amazing. She runs the entire special events management program at ASU, which was my alma mater, so really excited to have her here. For those who have never heard about special events management programs, they do exist. In fact, this show is a great testament of them. Wendy is just a badass when it comes to all things special events management. She manages all the content. She gets all the speakers in for all the different teachings of classes. I mean, literally, everything I know has to be attributed to Wendy, so I got to give it up to Wendy for making it all happen. So thank you so much for joining us, Wendy, and giving your view on the educational academic side of the event planning.
Thank you for asking me.
Awesome. Next up, Mr. James Morgan. James is actually calling in at a very, very late hour all the way from London, and so excited to have him. James and I were hanging out at IMEX, what was that, 3-4 weeks ago, and we were talking about it, and James is actually a PhD and is a senior lecturer of special events management and event management, which is really, really exciting because I didn't know that, and I said, oh my gosh, we're doing a panel on special events management. We have to have you here. So I'm just so excited to have James. And James actually comes with a ton of event experience as well, judges a ton of competitions for everything from event tech to event management. So I'm just really, really excited to have you here, James, and thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Will.
Awesome. All right, next up is Mr. Howard Givner. If you've never heard of Howard, where are you? Are you living under a rock? Howard runs the Event Leadership Institute. If you haven't heard of it, it's actually a really cool, I guess you would call it, for lack of a better term, online college for event planners, event management, event professionals of all kinds to be able to go get their CMP credits, get to learn more. There's some really amazing courses on there. They do tons of, like, just the amazing amount of amazing content that they push out. Literally these e-courses that you can learn everything you want to know, from technical meeting management, which our friend Brandt teaches, to, you know, how do you manage catering companies, to what do you do when there's a fire at your event? Literally anything. So Howard's here to give us a perspective of what's it like to be educating and letting people, the continuing education go when it comes to the event managers and the event professionals that we have out here. So it's a real honor because I have learned a lot from you as well, Howard, in the Event Leadership Institute. So thank you so much for joining us today, Howard.
My pleasure.
And last but not least, Mr. Vern Baiett. Vern is a hashtag event icon for sure. So Vern was actually, I think, my first teacher I had in my special events management program at ASU. And for the longest time, our company used to have this motto called "Crushing the Box," which we actually stole from Vern, or acquired from Vern. And Vern taught me a lot of things and introduced me to a lot of people that helped kickstart my event career. And now has moved on. Well, actually, before I even go on to what he has moved on to, he's actually, I think, Vern, you were the first person in the United States to get their PhD in festival management. Is that right?
Well, I don't know if I'm the first, but I got my PhD at Arizona State in community resource and development with an emphasis on festivals and events.
Awesome. So here to teach us a little bit more about the festival management, and actually is a very, 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 very influential person in the Arizona events industry as well. So we owe him a lot for what he has done. And now he has moved on from teaching at ASU, and now is in North Carolina. Literally, he picked the other side of the country for us, and is now teaching over at High Point University. Is that right?
That's correct. High Point University in the Piedmont Triad. So close to Greensboro, Winston-Salem.
Awesome, awesome. So, thank you so much for joining us, Vern. So excited to have you here, and honored that to have my first event management teacher here on the show with us today.
Good.
Awesome, awesome. Well, we have a lot of guests today, so we have a lot to go through and a lot of questions. So we're going to start off with the first question and give everyone a little bit of a background about what got you into the events industry, and why don't you talk a little bit about what got you into teaching events and educating the future event professionals or current event professionals? So why don't we kick it off, Howard? Why don't you kick it off? How did you get involved in the events industry, starting your first company to now running ELI?
So I spoke at Penn State School of Hospitality Management about a week and a half ago, and I shared a story of how I got the bug of events, being the social chairman of my fraternity 35 or whatever many years ago. And at the time, I probably shouldn't laugh about it, but the drinking age in Pennsylvania where I went to school was 21, and our school was in Philadelphia. So the duties of the social chairman involved driving across the Schuylkill River and going into New Jersey to buy alcohol at the age of 18, transport it back across state lines, sell it without a liquor license. I'm sure we didn't have liquor liability insurance, and looking back, it's a miracle. God forbid nobody really got hurt, or yours truly didn't go to jail. But that's kind of where I started it. Was at school planning events, and I think a lot of people who get into this industry, at some point they had a passion for it. I don't think people get to be in their 20s and say, oh my God, I've always loved insurance or actuarial science or something like that. But in our industry, you get exposed to it in some capacity like that. So my background is I started and ran an event company. That's kind of what it was called back before you used the term agency. It was called Paint the Town Red. I started it by myself, and I like to say we took 2 steps forward and 1 3/4 steps back. Pretty much that was our pace. But eventually we added employees and we grew, and I ran that business for about 20 years. I sold the company in 2008 to the Global Events Group out of Spain. They were the largest event company there, and they were looking to come into the United States. And when I left, I really felt very passionately that there was a void in terms of the availability and the quality of event education. And my focus wasn't really on the people learning in schools. It was really, well, we started by building the resource that I would have wanted my staff to have access to when we were planning events, because events have so many different types of variables and clients and different scenarios, and it's rare that you've got a person who's good at all of those things. You can get somebody from a hotel who's good at food and beverage and not know AV, or someone who's good at AV and doesn't know transportation, and there's always something you're a little weak in. And so I felt the industry could have used a resource where people could just immediately jump in and get smart on something. If your client's CEO wants to use a teleprompter and you never used it, you log in 30 minutes later and now you can have a conversation and not sound like an idiot. So that's kind of my journey. It kind of got us to where we are. I've really enjoyed working with a growing number of college instructors. We've probably got about a dozen or so that use our videos in their classes now, in conjunction with or in exchange and instead of textbooks. And one of the takeaways I would say to the people watching this is the next generation of event professionals are coming into the industry far more educated than I did, and most of the people of my age, because we were just sort of self-taught. These people are coming in with a baseline knowledge that is far greater and more detailed than what we had. So I think it's a really good topic that you picked on today, and hopefully I can contribute as best I can. I think it's a great panel, and we'll cover all different sectors of education. So that's my quick little story.
And just curious, how many like courses, pieces of content does ELI totally have right now?
So we started with like a subscription-based, like a Netflix-style on-demand library of short courses. So averaging 45 minutes or so, and those, excuse me, were designed to be unbundled, and so they're cut up into chapters from the beginning. So we can kind of let people do the micro-learning thing. So there may be a 40-minute thing on event insurance, and I can tell you right now, most people jump to that 4.5-minute segment on how a certificate of insurance is filled out, which is fine. I think we've got about 150 or so of those classes. And then about 3 years ago, we also added these structured courses. These, we call them professional development courses. Those are much longer. They span 4 to 12 weeks. And there are 9 of those that run probably 2 to 3 times a year.
Awesome. Awesome. Fantastic. Yeah, really great content. If you are not already checking out ELI, you definitely need to log on and check out their content. Awesome stuff. So I'm going to flip it over.
Your check's in the mail, Will.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for the plug.
I'm going to switch it over to Wendy. So Wendy, you've been running the Special Events Management Program at ASU for a little while now. Can you talk a little bit about what got you into the events industry, and then how did you end up running this really innovative program that, you know, even when I was running an event company at ASU, didn't even know it existed, and now it's one of the leading special events management programs?
Well, let me start out by saying thank you for having Howard going first, because I'm going to look into your website, and I definitely plan on using some of that information in the advanced class next semester. So this was great. I got into my interest with events through Girl Scouting. For many years, I was involved in put this program on, put that program on. You know, a lot of people, as Howard found out, you have natural leadership abilities, and I found that in myself, and I shared my interest and talents with others. So I wound up doing a lot of programming for a lot of people. My education, undergrad, was in physical education, but the master's and beyond is in recreation. And in recreation, you learn how to work with large groups of people. And by working with large groups of people, I found that this is really fun. I mean, it's really fun to plan the programmatic aspects. When I moved to Arizona 27 years ago, I realized they had no special event education or special events courses at all at ASU, so I started it. I started doing the first course 27 years ago, and we're still going strong with courses that, you know, a full slate of introductory courses. We also have an 18-credit academic certificate, and we have a full minor also that students can join into. And the certificate is a standalone certificate so that we have community members in it too. You do not have to be a registered student in a major in order to be part of the certificate. And we have done no marketing, and we seem to have our classes fill up, which is really nice. A lot of tourism students, nonprofit, but I have students from across the university, all over the university, taking our courses. And the thing that is, I suppose, somewhat unique within our university is that everything we do has to have a hands-on service learning component. So 27 years ago, I hooked up with Vern, and you know, when he was working with City of Phoenix, and my students have been working with event professionals in the field ever since then, alongside getting the classroom learning. So
Awesome.
It's been nice.
Awesome.
It's been a nice ride with full support from the university. Absolutely full support. So
That's awesome. That's awesome. And for those who don't know, ASU is a massive school. It's like 100,000 students now or something like that.
yeah, I think like 95,000. When 95,000 still isn't enough, they want us to grow. But you know, who knows? Yes, it's one of the largest universities in the U.S.
Awesome.
When did you guys offer a major in event management?
We decided not to offer a major in event management. What we're doing is concentrations in events management. We're adding this on, concentrations in our tourism program in event management and in our community sports management program. And then we have the standalone certificate plus the minors. So within those, you know, we're talking about, just with the certificate program, there's like 120 students enrolled in that. And that includes having to take something online in the summer, so they're paying summer tuition. And the minor has close to the same number of students in it, which is manageable because we don't have loads of money to buy, to bring in other faculty right now. Everything we do, except for one course in the certificate, is on the ground in the classroom. We do not have an online program. And that was a choice that we made to not do online right now because others are doing it.
So that's going to spark a question for me a little bit later. So, but before we get to that, I want to flip over to James across the pond to talk a little bit about his experience and what got you into the events industry, and then what made you go down the path of doing the PhD and becoming a senior lecturer.
I've been smiling a lot because Aaron Kaufman from Toronto is sending me messages on Facebook Messenger. So excuse me if I kind of crack up a bit. But
we got some fans.
Besides that, I started in events when I was at hospitality school, and continued, and then I got did hospitality with events as work. Then I went agency side, and I was working for a marketing agency, brands marketing, live marketing, etc. And now Nick Borelli's making funny jokes on my Facebook Messenger feed. Excuse me, but that continued, and then I decided to go back to school, and I spent 10 years doing I went back and did a tourism planning degree, which is all about policy planning, place-making, stuff like that, and sort of took all my events knowledge into that. And then I did a master's in town and urban planning, but oriented towards regeneration and culture, and that led to my PhD in cultural regeneration and how we use culture to regenerate places. And then I was approached during that period if I would like to teach, and I said yes. So I teach at the University of Westminster on the undergraduate tourism with events management degree. It's an honours degree. We also have a tourism with business management and a tourism with planning management. So we all sit within an architectural and built environment school in central London. And I still work in the industry. I've got a startup or two. The Event Tech Lab, which you know about, Will. So that's a startup Marcoms community, virtual community, 35 partners around the world. Yeah, and I still make organize events, which I love. I really love it. Yeah.
Can you give everyone
my story.
I love it. I love it. Can you give everyone an idea of the different topics that you're covering in the classes that you're teaching?
Yeah, so because we're in architecture and built environment school, it's very much about the kind of policy aspects of events, and then more about the design stuff. So we do experience design. We teach the students how to sketch, how to use various bits of software to actually do fly-throughs and things like that. But then we also teach them the kind of the kind of theoretical side, like Lefebvre's production of space thesis, or Pine and Gilmore's experience thing. We do various things. Obviously, for the postgraduates, a bit of more of a higher theoretical level, but the undergraduates get 3 years of actually doing event stuff. And because we're in central London, we get a lot of opportunities from companies who want students to volunteer. So they're getting a lot of practice while they go through their courses.
Awesome. Fantastic. So I'm going to hop from one PhD to the other. And Vern, can you give everyone, you have a really awesome backstory and kind of what got you in the events industry. And can you tell everyone a little bit of a quick background as far as what got you in the events industry, and then what led you to Wendy to teaching some of the classes at ASU and where you are now?
Sure. Well, it's kind of interesting because my story was just told by 3 other people. Actually, in college, in my fraternity, myself and a couple others, we decided to roll a flatbed truck in front of the fraternity house, hire a couple of go-go girls, and we had the Phi Sigma go-go. and we were buying beer. It was mostly to meet girls, but that's probably the first real event I ever did. So Howard, I know where you came from. And then I never thought of myself as an event person, though. I was always a recreation person. I did my master's at Arizona State back in the early 70s, and I had my first real job at a retirement community. I worked there for 5 years. As I look back, it's real easy, though. Half of what I did was special events. We had parties, we had banquets, we had meetings of all kinds of events going on. I ended up working for City of Phoenix as a Parks and Recreation supervisor, and we did a lot of big community events, but the mayor of Phoenix back in the late 80s wanted to start an office of special events, much like they have in Chicago. So it was housed in Parks and Recreation, and I jumped over and joined in there. Spent almost 13 years with the Office of Special Events in Phoenix, and we produced the big events for the city, but 4th of July and the big Christmas parade and other things like that. But we also got involved when Cirque du Soleil started to travel the first time. We got all the arrangements made for them to come in, and when the Phoenix Grand Prix was there, we were involved, or the NBA basketball all-star game. So got involved quite a bit in all kinds of events. After being there for a while, though, 13 years, I jumped over to City of Glendale, which is a big suburb. They now have a hockey arena and University of Phoenix football stadium and Super Bowls. Jumped over producing more tourism-type events, working out of the marketing department. We had big 8 events for the city, trying to get people over there to visit our downtown, part of redevelopment and everything. I thought I retired 12, 13 years ago, and Wendy called and said, "Vern, you need to teach some leisure classes with us." I'd occasionally taught as an adjunct before, and so I showed up and started teaching some general leisure classes, and within the first year, we hooked up together and we put together the certificate she told you about. And I taught in that for a long time, 3 or 4 classes every semester. It was a lot of fun doing things. I was there all the time. So when the Community Resource Department decided to start a brand new PhD, I said, what the heck? And I jumped in. That was in 2008. Took me 5 years to finish, but I got it done. I wasn't going to study festivals and events. I'd worked in events for my whole life, and I said, I know everything about events. I don't need to do that. So I took my first qualitative research class, and I quickly learned that I didn't, what most of us in the event industry don't know hardly anything about, and that's the actual on-site behavior of people at festivals and events, because nobody studied it, no one's really looked into it. So that's been my specialty for a while. 3 years ago, I found High Point University just randomly. They were looking for somebody to come in and take their minor, which had been around for about a year and a half, and turn it into a major, one of the first really bachelor programs in the United States. Although they're real popular around the world, in the United States we don't really have very many bachelor programs in event management. So I came on board here in fall of 14. I think I had 16 minors at the time. Right now, basically 2 years and a semester later, 2.5 years later, I think we're up to almost 70 majors and 70 minors. So it's taken off. It's going nuts. Just like our certificate program did at Arizona State, I think there's a big need for it.
Awesome, awesome. It's really cool to see the differing levels that we have here. So, for example, with Wendy's program, you guys decided, hey, we're going to stick to minors and certificates. You know, Howard's doing the pure online model, where you know you can go and get kind of like you're saying, Netflix on the go whenever you'd like. And then over across the pond, James is doing something completely different. It's really awesome to see the diversity in the education that you guys have. But I think there's I'm really curious to know kind of what unites you guys, and I want to know that obviously you guys teach, because there's still a gap between what people think they know and what they need to know, right? Like all of us, most of us, well, I guess I can't say most of us because I did go to school for special events management, but most people in the industry never got a formal education in this, right? It was by the, the seat belts or whatever they say, So my curiosity becomes, what are the gaps you guys are seeing between what is being done out there and what you think people need to be educated on? So, for example, are you guys seeing that with technology moving as fast as it is, do we need to be teaching more about event tech and things like that? I think James is going to be like, yes, absolutely. But, yeah, that's my curiosity, is where's the gaps you guys are seeing right now when it comes to education and the areas that people need to know about that they maybe don't even think about when it comes to event management? So I'll kick it off with Wendy, if you want to let us know kind of where you're seeing the gaps are and where people need to fill in.
Definitely event tech, but we're going to be working with that here next semester, and then I have hooked up with an event technology program my class will be shaped around using their program. I don't know if I can mention, I have no idea if I can mention who they are.
Keep the suspense.
No, so we will actually be designing, my students will be consultants in their semester-long projects where they're competing against each other, consulting groups, to design a something week, whether it be Fashion Week or whatever. But we'll use their technology. So all of the advanced event students will come out technology knowledgeable. And this company came into all of our intro classes to introduce the product so the students would understand it beforehand. So technology is one thing. The other thing is a knowledge of budgeting. And almost every university student in all of our programs, unless they have some personal background, says that afterwards, that, boy, I wish I knew more about how to deal with the money aspect and just understood how everything integrates, because it doesn't just happen. Events don't just get paid for. So those are the two areas which I'm trying to integrate, and educate the students more about. And I do this by bringing in people who are in it right now and find ways to have the students gain hands-on experience.
Awesome.
I think what Wendy's saying about bringing people in is key for educators, because
absolutely,
we teach theory, but in order to teach theory, somebody's got to write the book that takes 3 years to get, by the time they start, it's getting published. And the industry is like a rolling wheel downhill. So we're always trying to catch up with what's really happening at the sharp end. So I think we rely a lot on guest speakers coming in and doing stuff. It's and I think that is the future of education. One aspect of it is having that industry engagement on a continual basis.
I'm going to jump in and tell you that I had a guest speaker last week, Palmer Ramsey, from a company out of Atlanta called World 50. And she's an event planner. World 50 has the 500 top CEOs in the world as their members, and she organizes meetings and events for them around the world. The students were fascinated to know that she worked out of her home office here in High Point, and she did it with a laptop that was open, Skyping the whole day. The laptop's hooked up to a robot. It runs around the office. She meets with her staff. She goes to meetings. She virtually does her job virtually the whole time. So not only getting the people in from outside, but introducing technology at the same time. It was pretty amazing.
That's awesome.
Will, can I add on to something James just said? Because not only do I bring the professionals in, but absolutely every student that goes through at least my classes has to work in someone else's event. I mean, they have to gain the hands-on experience, and you can't have a minor or certificate if you don't have plenty of experience. So if they don't have a minimum of 3 events that they've worked at, they have to go out and do that. No credit. Otherwise, you have to go and do the diversity of hands-on experience. And that's key, because then the students bring more information back into the classroom.
Yeah, absolutely.
I was
Yeah,
going
I
to
think
say, so
we all
Howard,
have
on your end, you
experience.
guys have, they're talking about bringing in experts, and you have primarily, I mean, that's what all of your classes are taught by people who are, in the weeds, have done this before, and are true experts in their craft, whether it's AV or catering or, layouts. Was there a specific reason why you guys went that route versus, trying to create all the content on your own?
Well, I just want to be clear. So we do curate all the content on our own, and anyone who's developed any course or class content with us will attest to the rigorous process that we put them through. As an example, we have I don't know, let's say it's an hour-long class on Lighting 101, and the instructor we work with is Richard Tatum, who's one of the foremost lighting experts in events in the country. And he started by developing an outline for us, and I looked at it. In this case, I'm usually the one who reviews the material, and he kind of had it a little, I'm not going to say superficial, but it wasn't that technical. And I said, where's the part where you're going to tell people what a LECO is and what a PAR is and what the difference is between an LED and all these other things? And he said, well, planners don't really want to know that. And I said, you know what, actually, I think they do, and they need to know that, because a driving, and this sort of ties into your last question, a driving theme of all the content that we do is not just to teach people how things work and teach them the concepts, but it's undergirded with this existential dilemma that most planners face, particularly in-house planners, which is proving their value. There's no in-house planner who doesn't worry at some point that their company may take away some of the work that they do and either outsource it or put it into the different business units and have administrative assistants do it. And that's a common fear and concern. There's not a lot of CFOs who, when they're thinking of making cuts in some ways, whether it's a down economy or they're just trying to be more efficient, if they said, let's eliminate all the event planners, no one's going to look at them and think they're crazy in the same way as if they said, let's get rid of our IT department. You say, well, you can't do that. Someone's got to run the computers. But nobody thinks events are that complicated. And that's changing. But part of what we want to do is empower the planners through all the content that we have, not just to understand things, but to be able to explain to their bosses and their internal clients, this is why this is important. And so one of the gaps that I've been seeing out there, I totally agree with Wendy and James on tech, but where I would take it a step further is to teach people the ability to know when and under what circumstances certain technologies are appropriate to be implemented. Mm. To me, that's the heavy lifting, because, and you guys have probably seen this, particularly at industry events, whenever there's a new technology, the organizer just thrust it into the meeting or the event without really thinking about whether it feels organic or it makes sense. And to me, that's a really easy area for the event professional to prove their value to the client. So things are changing very quickly in the industry, particularly on tech, but in lots of other areas too, in part because through social media and blogs, everyone can get access to everyone else's ideas, and they can come in and say, well, what about we do this event, and we use this technology, and I want to use this white couch I saw on Preston Bailey's blog, but I want to light it with this blue thing that I saw somewhere. And the planner's got to be that curator of ideas and can prove their value by saying, here's why I think this idea works or doesn't work within this event context. I'll give you a really quick example. Digital polling, whether it's using through your cell phone or through handheld devices that are distributed by a third-party vendor, is a pretty good technology that is often really poorly misused. So if you're sitting in a meeting and the person on stage says, let's do a digital poll here, how many of you are planners and how many of you are suppliers? Okay, well, you'll get the exact percentage on the screen in about 10 or 15 seconds. But one, that information could have easily been gotten by a show of hands. And two, using those devices, 10 seconds may not seem like a lot, but it breaks the momentum and it grinds the process to a halt. So I would say that's not a great use of that technology. If you're going to say, how many of you planners have taken commissions and not told your client? Okay, now I'm with you. No one's going to put their hands up for that. That's a great way to use. Or how many of you steal from your bosses or something? Or how many of you think you're underpaid? Now you're using technology in a way that's actually going to move the needle further than if you just did a show of hands. And one of the things that we try to also teach is the real value or the real challenge is in being creative with a low budget, or finding ways to achieve your goals through an event that don't require you to bring in a really complicated technology. So sometimes doing things that are low tech but get the job done, I think, can be great. And at the end of the day, if a planner can kind of know which tools in their toolbox to apply to different situations, to me, that elevates them to the top of the list in terms of proving their value to the people they work for.
That's awesome.
Good
I
point.
definitely love what you're saying. Yeah, that's fantastic.
So
speak,
can I jump in, Will?
Yeah,
A little different thought on technology, though. So one of the things I discovered being in a communication school here at High Point is we're working, for example, with an outside person to develop a special class on lighting, audio, special effects, all that. He actually has a local company, and he just happens to have a PhD in water hydrology, which means nothing, but it allows him to teach at the university with an advanced degree. So we're doing that, but the other thing we're doing is communication technology that people don't think about. The latest, maybe most of us put things together in PowerPoint, some of those things, but we're using like InDesign now. We're going to the latest forms of Excel and tying things in, the social media aspects, staying on top of that. Technology moves way past just the physical these days, I think. It includes pretty much everything we do. So we've got to just, I think Howard said, you got to stay on top of it. Or James, it changes every day. So we're looking to try and keep on top of it every day.
that's awesome.
But, yeah.
I'm curious.
But
Go ahead,
there's
James.
a balance. There's a balance to be had between the kind of the way university budgets work. So it's easier to teach social media and software technology aspects than it is to teach the hardware. So for university departments, if you're not in a music school or attached to some sort of television school where they've got the AV equipment, they've got the staging, they've got the lighting, they've got the sound, universities don't yet want to invest in that hard technology yet. And that's where I think the future needs to go, is to kind of widen out the programs. Because if you look at Howard's website, and I've been through it, looking at the content, I'm on the ILIA Education Council, and we like to see what's out there in terms of education resource. We've had a partnership with the Institute for a few years now. And there you see anything from the session that you did, Will, on the hard technology aspect through to stuff on the soft technology. And I think that's where the universities in general are failing, especially if you're in a business school, which most, in Europe, most of the events management programs sit within business schools first and hospitality schools second. That's kind of, and there's just no, they've already built a kitchen in the hospitality school. They're hardly going to buy a bit of staging and some, lights. It's holding us back, I think.
I love it.
Will,
I love it.
do you remember how I told you to pick up the trash with technology?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You remember what we taught in class, picking up the trash using technology?
It has been quite a couple years.
Yeah, so I mean, it's even down to that level. I mean, do you need people with rakes and pickers, or are you using blowers and street sweepers? You use modern stuff in this field all the time, and we've got to just make sure students understand there's better ways. Technology really saves time and energy a lot. We've got to make sure they understand that.
With that said, I did a presentation last summer at the ICRE conference, which is a conference of educators in hospitality and events and things like that. And in advance of that, we did a survey to about 50 or so people who hire within the industry, and those are either owners of agencies or heads of event departments, or they're the head of venue sales or something like that. And we asked them to rank the skills that they felt entry-level employees, so people coming into the workforce out of college, where are they the least prepared, or where would they like to see them prepared more? And the two things that were number one and number two, and you could kind of blend them together, were communication and writing. And the examples I got, and the people who commented, they didn't just fill out the survey, they were like angry that people couldn't write a freaking email without a million smiley faces and exclamation points and all caps and whatever. And I think that's not to be underestimated. And in part, that could be, ironically, an area where university event instructors can really help students, because I have two kids. I have a 20-year-old and a 15-year-old, and they don't use email. Email is not in their world. They use texting and Snap and everything, and that is a completely different language. It's on an economy of words and characters, which is fine. But as soon as you get into the workplace, who knows, maybe in 10 years that'll change as they all come in. But for the most part, there is a hard turn toward email, and you have to know how to compose an email. Things we take for granted, right, are things that are the biggest complaints of people who hire new people. They're communicating to clients and vendors and venues, and they're communicating initially similarly to how they would text message somebody, and it's not representing the department and the company. There's one woman who heads the event and meeting team at KPMG, an accounting firm, and they probably have 80 to 100 planners, and this is an accounting business, right? So she's saying, like, this reflects your personal brand and it reflects the department's brand, and we can't have people talking to the outside world like that. So, you know, not to take anything away from technology, because that's actually an area where incoming entry-level people can really add value, because a lot of the older people don't keep up with the social media. As soon as one platform they figure out, boom, there's another one. And so when they come in, that's a good skill for them to have, and they're often asked to do that when they get their first job. But if it comes at the expense of being able to string a few sentences together, then it's going to hurt them.
But Howard, I think that's a general failing with the education system as a whole, rather than universities. I mean, people come to university to specialize in something. They go to school to read and write and add. And you know, obviously some universities have a very high value commercial agenda, and maybe the entry requirements are not as stringent as others. So people are hiring graduates from...
So Howard, also, here at High Point, we have a few things.
In my view, they should have been on their management course in the first place, because, you know, reading and writing is something that I learned when I was 12 or 13 years old. By the time I could write an essay, that kind of thing. I'm sure you all could.
I was going to jump in here and say some of the things we're doing here probably Howard would like. We have a human communication class where people learn how to speak, but then as in all our event classes we follow up, and it's not unusual for students to have to give anywhere from 4 to 6 oral presentations during each of their follow-up in all their event classes. We do the same thing with having them create flyers and brochures and posters. They learn the technology to do it, but now we make them practice it and use it over and over again. And as far as the writing goes, one thing that is so different for me being in a communication school these days, we call it the rule of 7. Once we reach 7 typos or grammar errors or something in a paper, we immediately stop and send it back to the student and tell them it's not acceptable until it's corrected. And I really agree with you.
Thank God I didn't have that.
The beginning is so hard. But they get it. They learn as they go.
I'm just curious from everyone else too, so other than the writing and the communication aspect, are there any other areas you think that students are really unprepared for when they're entering into, you know, the event professional world? Wendy, any thoughts?
Go to someone else. Let me think about this.
Well, while Wendy's thinking, another thing that's come up a bit, particularly in response to the survey that I mentioned, and we started sending out a blog post every few weeks, specifically to college instructors to share some of these insights. There were sort of two, and one of them, they're a little bit related. One of them was this importance of recognizing that events are in the hospitality world. And so it's not just about walking around with a clipboard and a headset and barking orders at people that you might think of it on TV. You have to really have a good attitude and a smile and a pleasant demeanor, and people really have to get the sense that you're dealing with a customer, and you've got to keep the client happy at all times. And so things that we hear are, that they look for people who've worked in restaurants, who've worked at the front desk at a hotel, people who have worked in retail where they have to deal with potentially obnoxious or illogical customers that complain, and they have to keep a happy face on. So that's one. The other one is the sense of a pace, and the sense that when you're planning events in the real world, it's not a linear pace. And in many cases in college and most of education, you follow a relatively straightforward plan, right? The classes all start on this day. This is when your break is. This is when finals are. And it's rare that you get curveballs in that process. The event industry is different. And so one of the things we're suggesting, and a lot of the people who teach at the college level are teaching, they're integrating planning of an actual event. Sometimes it's a mock event, but a lot of times it's a real event for the school or for an alumni group or something like that, which I think is great. But one of the suggestions that we give is throw a curveball in. 2 weeks before the event, tell them the budget is cut 20%, come back to me with ideas. Or the guest count is increasing by 100 people or whatever. And just to sort of let them get comfortable with the fact that, you can't necessarily break things down and logically go A, then B, then C. Sometimes the client pulls the rug out from under you, and if you're a real anal retentive person who that really throws sideways, then certain parts of the event industry are going to really rub you the wrong way. So those are things that are they're easy to teach. You don't need a book for it, but they sort of will help people know that, yes, the event industry is for me, and they can address things that are on sort of the soft skill side that can help them better prepare for what they find in the workforce.
So
I can
we
add
actually
to that
teach
now.
that we use an old French term, élan vital, and we basically teach that in events you start at point A, but you don't go to point B. You just start and you go. And you go all over, a little bit like smoke filling the room from a candle. And it's amazing. I think you'd be surprised at how much probably Wendy and James and I throw curveballs. I think most events people understand that, and I know Wendy and I are constantly doing it to students. So I think some of that is probably out there, getting them to realize that we've got to adapt, we've got to move. Things are never the same. I talk about chaos. I talk about ambiguity all the time, because if you can't live with it, you can't really be in this field.
Can I add something, Will?
Yeah,
To
go
both
ahead.
of them? I also think that those entering the field need to realize that they personally have to have endurance. Howard, you talked about that things go at a different pace, but at 62 years old, I'm constantly outpacing my students in being able to have energy at the end of a day when we're working on an event. I'm like, what's up? Because they're not used, so many of them are not used to having to give energy and pace their own energy for extended periods of time. And we know we have to do that in the event world. The other thing, talking about the curveballs, my entire final, and I'm sure none of my students are watching this, my entire final is an inbox, outbox type of situation. So they start with create your own scenario about an event, and when they hand that in to me, each piece of paper for 7 different parts are something that could go wrong, and they have to talk about how they can handle it, including a 3-page meeting of all different people who are bringing up, different things that can happen. So, as Vern said, we throw a lot of these things at them, and they know they have to respond. And if they don't, they also realize this might not be for me.
Oh,
Awesome.
I'd like to throw something out. I know we only got a few minutes left here, but one of the things that we're doing here at High Point, and I would hope more event people around the world do, and that's teach experience design. I know that James mentioned it earlier, but one of the things we've discovered is that Students are really good at the basics. They're good at the operations, putting the nuts and bolts together, but they really don't understand what makes a great experience and how you design it and the thoughts behind it. So we actually have a whole class on nothing but experience design. So James, are you doing that too?
Yeah, we have at the postgraduate we got something called creative experiences for events and attractions, and that as well as another one, event concepts. So those all to do with experience design and all the theory related to that. And then that culminates in a practical event where they do the postgraduates produce the alumni festival. And then at the undergraduate, we have an event design and production, event production, event operations, which all leads toward a staging an event scenario. And that's where a lot of curveballs come in. I remember last year, one of the venues pulled out at the last minute to do the student event. They all have to make a profit at their event that they produce in groups. And they were just sort of about, I think it was 3 or 4 days before the event, having to find a new venue. So yeah, so it can be quite nail biting if you're mentoring them.
So I love the curveballs because, I mean, yeah, as an AV guy, I'm so used to like literally stuff hitting the fan all day long. So I definitely appreciate the curveballs. So like Vern said, we only have a couple more minutes left. I just want to make sure everyone's doing okay on time. We started a little bit late, so we want to make sure that we get the full hour out of it. But my question to you guys, I want to make sure that we get this question in because we have a lot of event professionals actually tuned in right now who are either continuing their education. Maybe we have some students who are also watching saying, hey, I want to get into this. But for the event professionals out there, are like, you know what? All those things you're talking about that need to be taught, I could teach that. How would you recommend the best way for an event professional to get involved with either your school or to get involved in teaching, or maybe even their school doesn't have a program, how they could start something up like you did, Wendy? What are your guys' thoughts? I'll start with Howard, since I think that you have a ton of people probably approaching you wanting to teach classes all the time.
So we're not an accredited college, and in the U.S. in a lot of cases, I think you have to have a master's degree to teach a lot of courses there. But I will tell you, we've probably turned away 3/4 of the people who've submitted forms to teach, who I know are teaching at other colleges. In a lot of cases, they're in adjunct roles. And this is not a knock on anyone at the undergraduate level. I'm just saying, it's harder than people might think. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I learned early on is it's having the subject matter expertise is only part of the equation. And as an example, there were 1 or 2 topics that we did early on where we brought in like the rock star of rock stars, the owner of a top company. I don't want to say the category because I don't want to say anything out of turn, but this was like the best guy I could find. And when we finished taping it, and I had spent money to bring a crew on site, I just said, it's just too dry. It's too dry and it's not engaging. And so the thing I would say first is it's a commitment. It's a commitment to not just that you just know the stuff in your head. You have to find a way to get it from your head and present it in an organized way so that the people at the other end can understand it and apply it. And not everybody has both of those skill sets. So, Will, for example, you mentioned Brant Kruger, who does our technical meeting and event production course, and he's done other tech-related things. Brant's a really good example because he knows the material, but he also knows how to present it, not just visually, but how to talk to people in a way that they walk away thinking, oh, wow, I really understand that. And so it's a combination of those two things. For us on our site, you can go to the About menu, and there's a link for content submission. And there you can fill out, if anyone's interested, you can fill out your information. You can suggest a topic, and we do ask for a description and 4 learning outcomes. So if you can't quite get your arms around that, that I would say that would be a good first step. Don't just say, I can teach X. Think about how you would describe it. Think about some learning outcomes that people would get out of it. And be prepared to to do some work. And I would say the difference in what we do and what you get at a university versus some of the free content that's out there. And I did a class on this at the last PCMA education conference. It was free or fee, whether to charge for content in advance of a conference, for example. But there are a lot of publications that offer webinars that are free and things like that. And some of them are good and some are not. But I would say that the burden of somebody who sells education like we do and like a university does is you're not getting your money from advertising, and you live and die on the quality of the content. And so it has to be good. If you want to put your toe in the water, maybe try something like a webinar for an industry publication where if it's not that good, as long as they got enough eyeballs there and the sponsor was happy, it's not the end of the world. Unfortunately, we have a different type of a bar, so our system is a little more stringent.
So
I would agree with Howard.
One of the things I would look for, Howard mentioned at the university, we have to have people with at least a master's degree. But even when we do that and people come on board, one of the ways that we evaluate people, some of the adjuncts we've been able to hire, is have they been making presentations at professional conferences? Because it's one thing to just want to teach, but can you actually get in front of people? Can you keep them occupied? Can you make it work? And I found that people that seem to be teaching at professional conferences a lot, doing sessions, tend to be better at it, just probably because they've had more practice.
Yeah, and I wouldn't bring in someone, for the most part, who hasn't presented in one of our classes. I mean, I have to see them before, and I get a lot of requests. I can teach that, just like you said, Howard. Yeah, we can teach that. I'm in town, blah, blah, blah. If we've seen them working. So I also offer them the opportunity, how about we come and visit you as a field trip and let me see how you address my students there, but they're not just going to come in and teach because we've had those flops. You have to babysit them too much.
James, do you have any thoughts on someone who wants to get into teaching, what that you would recommend for them to do?
I think if somebody wants to teach and they've never presented before, that might be a problem. And so I agree with Vern there. But saying that, we've got a great guy that comes into. He's a technical designer, a production designer. So all the AV, the lighting, the sound, the staging, and yeah, you hold your bag, Will. A fantastic company. They're called Hawthorne, a technical production company. They've done the Queen's birthday and all sorts of stuff. They're great. But he's funny socially. He's kind of quite sort of laid back. When he gets in front of the students, he gets very animated and chatty. So although he doesn't present or anything, it was I suppose a godsend getting him in, just saying, look, can you come and do a light show and tell, please, was the starting point. And yeah, we don't have any lights to show the students. That's one of my gripes. Yes, he's fantastic. Some of the other ones are, yes, through field trips I found a couple of people as well. So it all adds up really into improving that industry engagement. The head of London and Partners, the lady that organises all the major events for London, Tracy Halliwell, she's actually become a research fellow in the department now, and so she's presenting to students all the time. But she's a great speaker, so I suppose it's different. There's no set rule really. It's a kind of moving feast, but we're always looking for talent, and you find it in different ways really.
A good example of that is because a lot of media companies are putting on events, and in New York, for example, the New York Times, in their facility, the Times Center, they have a lot of events where they bring in celebrities or well-known people, and they've really tried hard to get their writers and their print editors to do the interviewing, and some are good and some are horrible people who have no business like really pulling your teeth out. And so it's not for everybody. I think actually it's easier if somebody is good at conveying material and is good at explaining something and engaging students. I think they can fill in a lot of the blanks by consulting experts, by bringing in somebody who can cover off on some of the areas. I don't think they have to be the uber expert. They have to know their material, and they have to know who to go to when they don't know something. But I think if you have somebody who's let's say 3/4 of the way there in the expertise, but is 100% there on the presentation skills, I think that's gonna get the job done. Because the way you judge this is not on the teacher. You judge it by the students and their ability to absorb and apply the content. So it's definite, and I don't want this to turn into something where we're discouraging people from teaching, because I do think it's a great feeling to give something back. And whenever I've taught in person, I always find it's the most gratifying thing I do in my work. But even the people that I've had as guest speakers in the industry to the classes I've taught in person, I make them prepare something in advance. And if they can't quite do that, even if it's a couple of slides, as we did this event, here's some background, here's what the client's goals were, here's what we did, they've got to kind of make a little bit of an effort to it. And I think Vern had said it, that if you haven't presented, or maybe Wendy said, if you haven't presented at an industry event, you really kind of don't have a sense of what you're in for. Because it's a very different thing. If you're at a conference and there's 9 breakout sessions and yours kind of isn't that great, well, the impact on the overall conference isn't terrible. But if somebody's paying to attend a course and the instructor is not that great, that becomes a big problem.
That's awesome. I love it. I love it. Oh my gosh, you guys have dropped so many knowledge bombs. I mean, I have so many questions I still want to ask, but we're running out of time. So I think this is going to definitely warrant a part 2 of this episode to continue the discussion, debate around this, because I mean, there's just so many questions from the audience that we didn't even get a chance to get to, from I have questions floating around my head, so I think we're definitely gonna have to do a second part of this episode. So just to be cognizant of the time that we have left, I want to end with the last 2 questions that we ask all of our guests when you come on the show. So the first question that I have for you guys is, if you had one tip for event planners or students going into event planning that you think they can use to take their events to the next level or improve their planning process, what would be your one tip for planners that you would give them today? So why don't we kick it off? Wendy's waving. She's so excited. She's got one ready for us. Wendy, kick it off.
I want to challenge event planners to hook up with the universities and offer opportunities for students to get involved to help you out, or classes to do a portion of your event, and you take the time to mentor the young folks so that they have role models to follow.
I love it.
I love that.
That's fantastic.
I love that. That's awesome.
Drop the
That's
mic.
great. I think I'm going to steal your idea.
Really? I was going to say, what, Wendy, you haven't seen anyone since I was doing that for you?
No, I've met up with other people.
Awesome. What about you, James? What would be your one tip for planners for 2016 into 2017?
Wow, that's hard, Will. I can just give them a bit of advice. It doesn't matter whether the kitchen's on fire and somebody's taking care of it. Walk out the door smiling.
There you go.
That's a good one. I've definitely seen that. Yeah, when AV things are going, sometimes you just gotta be calm and collected. You gotta be the duck paddling like crazy underwater, but looks smooth sailing, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Awesome. Howard, what about you? What'd be your one tip?
So before I give my one tip, I just want to add one very quick point, because unlike teaching in a university, the people that take our programs are working professionals. And I want to stress that we're in an age where you need to embrace lifelong learning. And that's not just this industry, it's every industry. And there's been an explosion of online content and in-person content and meetups and all kinds of things. And so in order to succeed, I think the learning never ends. And by way of example, when people register for any of our material, we ask them, one or two questions, one of which is, how many years of experience do you have in the industry? And we've got a pretty broad cross-section, and I just want, in case people take away that this is all about people who are in college or university, 29% of the people that are in our material or our programs have 8 to 15 years of industry experience, and another 15% have 16 plus experience. So, and they all take different things. And so I think the lesson there is you've got to constantly be taking courses and learning, whether it's event stuff or Excel or something else. But the advice I would give for people in general to take their events up to the next level is actually get out of the event industry and make sure that you're not just subscribing to industry magazines and industry blogs and industry newsletters. The really smart people, particularly on the creative side, are getting their inspiration from somewhere else. They're looking at how store windows are being designed. They're looking at technology. They're going on Mashable and all types of other sites, because that's where a lot of your really good ideas are going to come from. They're coming from outside of our industry bubble.
Awesome. I love it. I love it. Great advice. Very great advice. All right, Vern.
Okay,
Last but not least, what's your
before
tip?
I give my tip, I'm gonna just say Howard's words. Every year is a formative year. So exactly, I love what Howard said, because we can always learn. But my tip, I thought about this in advance for you. You've got to be proactive. You have got to be proactive to be in this field. You can react to things, but you've got to think things out in advance. That's why we have crisis plans. We don't wait and react. When things go wrong, we've thought about them. If they go wrong, what are we going to do? How are we going to handle it? I harp on my students over and over and over again in classes. Be proactive.
Love it. Love it. So good. Man, so many nuggets. I just have so many questions that I keep asking you guys. So awesome stuff. Awesome stuff. So I want to wrap up the episode with my favorite question. As everyone knows, what cool resources, apps, gadgets, tools that you guys want to share with the audience, whether it's something that you made or something you're using now, like your favorite pen, whatever it may be. I'd love to know what your favorite resources are. So, Howard, I know you got a ton of resources. You're the resource man. Oh, wait. I don't know. James seems like he wants to go for it. So, James, go ahead and kick us off with your favorite resources that you want to share with everyone.
I'm really excited about this. It's a bit of a plug. But I've been doing research over the last year around experience-based event planning. So how we democratize events and crowdsource ideas and put all that together to inform or inspire event planners to produce better events and events that actually in the marketing process it's pre-event marketing really. As part of that research, I've developed this web-based tool called sharedxp.events, and it's a crowdsourcing tool for any type of event. You can crowdsource ideas for entertainment venues, locations, keynote speakers, topics for panels, all sorts of things, webinars, and yeah, I want to tell everybody about it.
Yeah, awesome. Awesome. I love it. So sharedxp.events, right?
That's the one.
Awesome. So they just type in like www.sharedxp.events.com and takes them right on over to it. Awesome.
Yep.
I love it. I love it. And self-plugs are okay. We're totally okay with that here. All right, Howard, you got some resources ready for everybody?
Sure. So I'll quickly just say, take a look if you haven't been to eventleadershipinstitute.com. That's where all of our content is that I've been referring. I also developed a mobile app a number of years ago called Super Planner, which probably has about 30 different utilities and calculators. But for people to follow up what I said before about staying connected to lots of other ideas, and it seems overwhelming now in part because every organization you join, whether it's MPI or if you're involved, if you're on the social tables list, everybody creates these aggregator emails. They send you a list of 8 articles, whether it's every day or every week. You might like this, you might like this, and there's this explosion of content. And a really cool app that I've been using, which I think is free, is called Pocket. And you install it on your phone, and you see an article you like, you click Save to Pocket, and it syncs with your phone. And you can do it on your desktop or anywhere else. And for me, when I'm waiting for the elevator or waiting for the train or something like that, I've got 2 minutes of downtime. I open it up, and first I'm faced with all the articles that I haven't read, and I feel bad. But then I can start knocking them off a little at a time, and not just for the industry, but it's a way to sort of take everything that's coming at you, save it, put it in a place. It's not Evernote in the sense that you don't really have the ability to take notes and use it like that. If it's just a place to like bookmark and read things so that you have them on the go, I found it's pretty helpful for me.
I love Pocket. It's like my go-to. Same thing. 5 minutes to read, go to Get Pocket. So
Yep.
yeah, getpocket.com for everyone who's watching right now. If you want to download it, highly recommend. It's completely free too. Do you use the paid version?
I'm not sure what the paid version is offers that the free one doesn't. I don't know if I get the.
Exactly.
I don't think I'm paying for it, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I don't pay for it either. It doesn't really make sense, I think, to pay for it. So maybe they need to add some more features.
Maybe.
Awesome.
Maybe.
Awesome. Wendy, what about you? What would be your cool resources that you want to share with everyone?
All of you. Speaking to people. That's
Awesome.
I am much more a speak to people and listen to them and that kind of person than doing a lot of stuff with technology. So I look and see what other people are doing, and I speak to them, and I listen to things like this, and I follow around that way and share a lot of stuff with my students, through my experiences. The other thing, though, I have not been I've been in academia for almost 40 years, but I've also I have my own nonprofit and produced an event, which Vern challenged me and said, you can't make any money doing that. You're in academia. I remember when he said that to me. In my first year, I raised significant amount of money for Make-A-Wish. And then I did it the second year and the third year and the fourth year. And I ended up with $96,000 that I gave to them and said, well, I have too much else to do right now. So I still have the nonprofit. So my other thing is making sure that every academic gets experience in producing their own events too, so that, if you haven't done it already. So yeah, I have a PhD, but I can also produce events, Vern. Just like you.
That was a good growth mindset.
Just like you.
Challenge you to make some money.
That's awesome. Wendy, do you have any suggestions on how you're saying get out and talk to people? Do you have any suggestions on how you recommend for people to get out there and talk to people? Or are you, are you hopping on LinkedIn?
No, I'm
go to their
going and
event.
I'm visiting other events, and I'm doing, things that way. No, I don't even use LinkedIn much. It's just not my thing to do. I can use it, but I like to go when I'm at an event. I like to go and speak to the people putting it on, and then find out who some of them are, and then email with them and do stuff that way. I like the people-to-people approach.
Well,
I'm going to follow up with some people on here. What?
I was saying you just look for the people with the earpiece, and then you track them down.
Sort of, yeah.
Awesome. Last but not least, Vern, what resources do you have for everyone?
Okay, so really two things I want to talk about. One, real quickly though, is people in this industry don't know what great experience is about. And what I've discovered is the way you find out is by observing people. So one thing that I see some event people have, but not everyone, and I would encourage them all to have, is a journal. Because if you've got the journal, just an old-fashioned write-in-the-book journal, you carry it with you when you're observing things, when you're seeing what's going on, you write it down, you've got it, it's there, it's easy to find. You do that, and it really helps you understand what people are doing. If you're walking around the event observing people, it's almost like taking notes when you're doing ethnography. That's one thing that really helps. The other thing is a real common thing, I guess, but I didn't realize how important it was till I got here at High Point and in the communication school, and that's LinkedIn. We actually require all students to have a LinkedIn account, and in our senior seminars we actually work with them to make sure they're professional, that they have some good examples of their work on there. And I've had one graduate so far, and she got her job directly from LinkedIn. On the where you can find jobs on LinkedIn, and they loved her website. They brought her into interview. She was there. So sometimes it's been out there for a long time, but it's so valuable in this field, especially if you're a student and you want to let people know who you are. Everyone looks for you online. LinkedIn's a great way to tell them who you are.
Awesome.
So,
I
Will,
love it. I
along
love
those lines, I keep a listserv of probably close to 1,000 students now who've been in my classes, and so I have lots of people who are emailing into me, I have this opportunity for your students, and I literally get hundreds of that. So yeah,
Guilty.
yeah, right. So I ask those who are alums on there to keep in touch with me and let me know what they're doing and let me know when they have opportunities for students. So I get a lot of emails from those who I have taught and now are sharing, where it's gone from there, and that happens constantly, and that's a nice way to keep up and keep in touch, and it's a good thing.
I love it. I love it. I'm definitely guilty of emailing you whenever we have new jobs at Endless, so I
I love
apologize.
it. I love it. Great.
Awesome, awesome. Well, we've definitely gone over time, so I want to give a shout out to all the people attending, watching live, who have stuck through the entire hour and 15 minutes, 20 minutes that we've been chatting now. It's just so awesome to have you guys here again. I think we're going to definitely have to do a part two because there was just so much we didn't even uncover or talk about, so just super exciting. So I want to give a huge round of applause and a huge thank you to our amazing guests that we have today. So big shout out. Thank you guys. For all you guys tuned in right now, definitely tune in next week. We have an amazing episode, and I'm not going to give away, just as usual, I don't give away what's going on next week because it's constantly having the best episodes we've ever had, and I feel like every episode's the best episode we've ever had. But tune in next week, 5 p.m. Eastern to 6 p.m. Eastern, hashtag event icons. Also, if you didn't know, we live tweet this entire show, so if you loved what we talked about and you want to keep talking to everyone that's watching right now and the people who are going to watch the recording, well, then you can definitely do that. Just hop on Twitter and search hashtag event icons and continue the conversation on there. Super duper exciting. And if you happen to be watching the recording, join us live next week. It's definitely a completely different show when you get to ask the questions and interact with the guests live versus just watching the recording. So we'd love to have you there. So, all right, guys. We've gone way over time, so I want to make sure that you guys can get on with the rest of your weeks, and we will see you guys all next week on hashtag event icons. Thank you guys all very much, and have an awesome day.
Bye.
Bye.